righty. And we're going to go over here. Where am I? There I am. Hi. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Malice Experience. I am Mr. Malice. Of course, as always, below me, under me, where he always wants to be. He likes it when I'm on top. His Mystic Salon. And joining us again, okay, is Orlee.
Hi.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. So, well, it's always a pleasure to have you on. So today, what we're going to be talking about today, guys, is going to be a little bit less like an interview and just kind of like people kind of hanging out and bullshitting and talking is pretty much what today's going to be like. What we're going to be kind of starting out on, and then where the conversation goes as well, wherever the fuck the conversation goes. Wait, did I just say fuck before the first 5 minutes? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, we're good. All right. So what we're going to start out with is I kind of wanted to talk about demonic pacts and things like that. Now, the reason I want to talk to Orlee about demonic pacts is me personally, I've never actually, at least like to my knowledge, have ever done a demonic pact, right? Do I work with what would be considered demonic entities? Yes, I do. I mean, do I consider them demonic entities? Not really, but, you know, for argument's sake and everybody else's, you know, vernacular, we'll call them demons. Let's do that. So I kind of want to start out with that, talking about demonic pacts for kind of like the New Year's resolution kind of thing, like to hold us kind of accountable for the things that we do. Would that be something, you know, that would work? Like, would that, like, I mean, how would one go about doing that? So tell us, please. I'm curious.
Sure. So I like the integration of those two topics because we could look at them as being kind of similar. So, for example, the reason why someone who works with spirits would consider making a pact with them is the pledge of creating that alliance with some sort of documentation, some sort of oath, or some sort of promise between you two that has like a formalized ceremony. Or we could even see that as with people's New Year's resolutions, where it has that, like, you know, that pledge you're making to yourself. So instead of it being to a spirit, it's to your own self and what you want to do to improve. And when you make a pact with a spirit, you are having a particular goal that you're setting up between the two of you. And you don't have to make pacts with demons to work with them at all. So like, for example, if you're working with the Ars Goetia, you can evoke the demons without making a pact. But if you really want to have that, like, I mean, I could look at it as almost like a romance between yourself and the spirit, where you create this pledge between the two of you about what you want to achieve together, and the art of the formal ceremony, like even like the theater of it, that adds to the magic. That makes sense.
It does. So if one were to create a pact for such a reason, how do you feel like what would be like kind of like the most appropriate kind of like direction to go with that? Any particular demon you think or entity that would be, you know, good for everyone? Because most people that kind of jump in here, you know, a lot of people have some experience, but also a lot of people don't. And like I've had people telling me, for example, like the last couple episodes that, like, for example, they've been wanting to work with Baphomet, but they think that Baphomet is far too advanced to work with for their level. And I completely think the contrary, but you know, so what would you say? What entity do you think, and how would they go about it?
Well, it really depends on what the person is trying to do. But I would say, just as an example, two of the most common spirits that I work with people to help them make pacts with is Satan and Lilith. So with these spirits, there is no one particular way to make a pact. There are spirits, like the spirits in the Grimoire Verum, that have formulas for how to make a pact with them. That's actually people have experimented with, and it has like a tradition. But with a lot of these other forces, there really is no one particular way to make a pact with them. And it's the idea of the method of science and also what is meaningful to you to create a pact. So I help people who are very serious about connecting with these entities on a lifelong, and it's like exactly what Paranormal Witch is saying in the chat, where it's almost like a marriage. It really is, where you are going into something that you wouldn't ever want to undo. It's a lifelong thing, and maybe even outside of your life, outside of linear time, because as magicians, we work outside of ordinary reality and we work in non-linear time, like all things happening at once. And that's how you can affect the future. But anyway, with Satan, for example, the way that I made the pact was I first of all learned how to create rituals, and I learned a lot about magic and ceremonial magic through a lot of different magical systems, like in Western esoteric magic, stuff from the Golden Dawn, stuff from Thelema, and more traditional theurgy, like the Solomonic rituals, for example, from like the lesser and greater keys. And then I experimented with those systems for a long time, like almost 7 years or something, before I figured out what I actually could do to do this. And this is what I put together to try to help inspire people to create your own pacts. So the idea is when you're creating a ritual, you want to cause something that's going to change it into non-ordinary reality, or it's going to get the attention of the spirits that you want. So you put together a formalized structure where you're calling the spirits, you have invocations, you plan it at particular timings that might be auspicious. So like I did my pact with Satan on Halloween because that was a really auspicious time, and at midnight because of the stigma of that. And that's something else that I think is really important about like why I would even want to do this, because I just always thought it was super cool of the idea that like you could make a pact, or as I like to even think of it, sell your soul to Satan to see what would happen. Like I really just genuinely wanted to see what would happen if I put together a ritual that was as meaningful as possible to do this. And there is no like set in stone particular way. So I wrote a whole ritual, and then I also used the planetary squares that come from Agrippa, where it takes these squares of letters and numbers, and you basically, there's different ones attributed to different planets, and you can use them to pinpoint marks on this chart, and you use that to make sigils. And then when you make sigils, which are like a magical symbol for the spirit, it's attributed to those planetary attributions. And so I wanted it to be associated with Saturn for Satan. And so I spelled out Satan in Hebrew using the formula. And then I created what was like a personal mark for Satan for this working. That isn't something that's like something I'm putting out all over the internet telling people this is like the sigil for Satan, but it was something that I created as like the symbol for my working and my pledge. And I was really inspired by the Satanic Bible and Anton LaVey's work. So I like the idea of like taking that name as part of yourself. So I made a ritual where I literally like take that symbol and make it as part of my body um, during the rite. And that was super meaningful to me. I had something written out, and with Lilith too. I composed a ritual for her where at first you call the spirit forth, and then you state your intent, and then as part of the ritual, you use an apple, and the apple becomes consecrated to Lilith, because I like the symbolism of eating the forbidden fruit, and the symbolism of like the corruption of Eve through the force of the snake, which we also can see as Lilith. And during the ritual that I wrote, you've consecrated this apple, And then along with your written pact, you would also have this apple that you eat. And so those are just creative ideas that I had that I put together to create pact rituals. And I don't say that like that's the way to do it, but it's just a way that I figured out on how to do it that did work. Like it's not just fantasy. I've had results and success in the things that I was trying to do. So I definitely think it's valid. And it goes to the art of magic. And I think that's something that I always really try to push within people that it will help you to learn formulas for how to create spirit contact and how to create non-ordinary reality and that like weird strangeness where like really weird stuff will start happening in your ordinary reality where it becomes like no doubt in your mind that you've tapped into some sort of strange force where the universe is responding to the things events happen that are deeply synchronistic and make you go like, whoa, that's crazy. Or like paranormal things will start happening. All of these things happen the more you learn about doing different kinds of rituals that activate these like veils that become layered over your ordinary reality. And that's how people see like ghosts and spirits and that kind of stuff is you become more sensitive to these things through just doing a lot of magic in general. So for some people, they may not have done any rituals at all ever, but they really want to make a pact with the spirit. And I think that's okay if you are approaching it in a way where you're really serious about it. But I'd also say when you go to do it, don't expect there to be some kind of big paranormal thing that will happen afterward because you haven't trained in magic for a long time, unless you're already sensitive to the spirit realms. And that's something that a lot of people ask me about. They'll be like, okay, I did this thing. Did it actually work or not? And they don't know because they just did it and they were expecting there to be like some big sign or to have a dream where they meet that spirit or something. And that's not going to happen right away if you are just new to magic. So you just have to like trust in your own self. And that's the whole idea behind doing rituals. You do them with the intent, knowing that they will work and they have worked in the perfect way and the perfect time. And then you just leave it in the hands of the spirits.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, that one that was a lot of information. That was really fucking cool.
Thank you.
Yes, agreed.
Like, especially like when you kind of went into like how you did kind of like the whole sigil thing for Satan. Like that was fucking cool as shit. You know, I think one of the things a lot of people like run into, the problem that like a lot of people run into with ritual work is, personally, I think, especially when we're talking about beginners, I think they're afraid to get into ritual work. I think like, you know, they start out with the whole concept of spell work and kind of, you know, doing things like that, you know, getting herbs or whatever together, kind of like the whole, you know, kind of kitchen witch concept kind of thing, or hearth witch. And when it comes down to like the ritual aspect, I think a lot of people are kind of, one, afraid of like kind of getting into ritual work, and two, a lot of them also still have the idea of the craft in their head that, you know, they need like 4 people in order to do it, you know, or a group of people to do it, to you know, call corners and shit like that. That's Hollywood people. I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, yeah, they had somebody on site, but it was still Hollywood. So what would you tell somebody like that wants to get into doing ritual work, but, you know, they're scared of it. They're scared of kind of doing taking that first step forward to actually calling something into their lives?
Well, they should be scared, but they shouldn't let that control them. That's what I would definitely say. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a healthy fear of magic because magic is scary. It's super dangerous. No matter what you're trying to do, you're literally changing reality, and reality is going to do something and react to it. And just literally, like, the shock that magic is real once you actually start experiencing it directly, that is scary. Um, and that's where you might lose it. But the most important thing is to learn how to protect yourself. So before you start summoning spirits, it will definitely benefit you to have practiced some kind of way of cleansing yourself, of doing some kind of vanishing that you like know how to do well. Then you will get into actual spirit evocation because you already know, like, okay, if something bad happens, I know what to do. in case of an emergency. So that is really important. But start with summoning something that like might be less scary to you is also totally legit. Like when I first started doing spirit evocation, I was not summoning demons. I mean, I was scared to even start doing ritual magic. When I was 18 and I started learning magic, it was because I had a lot of paranormal experiences and I wanted to be able to protect myself. And I learned how to do this thing called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. And in it, you call archangels. And I was literally scared to call the archangels around me because I had never actually like chosen to have entities come and be around me. I only was ever passive to it. And so that idea was scary to me, but you become less scared for sure through like literal desensitization to crazy things and paranormal things. So that's like definitely gonna happen. You have to be able to protect yourself and know how to do those things, and then it becomes less scary for sure. And also to have spirits that are like, you know, just generally of good natured spirits, or working with things that are more elemental like planets first. That was one of the things that I started doing was like planetary magic, where you're calling the energies of different planets first, and practicing communicating with them. So that will help you. But I mean, I never thought that I was going to get into summoning demons or doing magic or anything. I didn't believe in any of this. And then I just started having so many paranormal experiences in my life that it was just a matter of like, well, I'm not going to just let this stuff happen. I didn't do it out of a curiosity or out of a need for it to like prove itself to me to be real, because that will either have two things. Like either it's just you're trapping yourself in a mindset that it's not possible and thus enslaving your own self, or the spirits are going to kick your butt and scare you to prove that it's real, like usually, which is quite shocking. So just like don't worry about that. But it's okay to be scared because it is scary. Like it's, but the fact that it's scary doesn't mean that it's not there. So it's like, do you want to see what's there? Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to live in a blissful ignorance of that, and you actually can. And then like, good for you if you can. Like that's probably like a way easier life. But it's just, it's not for everyone. So if you're, and like, I also don't encourage people to do this if they're like terrified of it or scared. Like just don't do it. Like it's probably not for you.
Yeah,
I
like
always
if you
think of it like
go for it.
anxiety. Even a little bit of anxiety is a good thing, even in real life. Like if you're a little anxious about crossing the street of a busy highway, it's probably because you have to pay more attention to it. For me, like the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram was a late addition to my, the craft that I do, and it was because I was still holding these huge misconceptions of calling to it. Like, I'm not calling to the archangels. Are you kidding me? The church, it was really, really ridiculous, and that was because I
It
hadn't
was like that for
truly.
me.
Yeah, I was so angry about it. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And then when you actually do it, it's like, okay, wait a minute. There's something to this, because it helps get you in that whole mindset and that process, and that it goes along with everything else that I do anyway. But my reasoning of having difficulty getting into ritual was actually the opposite of fear. It was almost hubris. Like, I don't need that. I don't need this. And it's not like that. When you open yourself up to it and you let it come in. I was scared once I really first had my first experience, and it was a very positive experience, but it terrified me. And it terrified me because I was like, I was so sure that it's not, no, there's nothing there. This is ridiculous. And like you mentioned, I got corrected. I was corrected. So that was not a fun experience, but then the fear was gone after that. Like, you start learning that even in this platform of things that you're dealing with and working with, they exist. And I do believe personally that they exist independent of us. Which that's a whole nother, meta whatever physics discussion. Um, and being that, it makes it scary because you feel like something may have the power of it, but you still have the control if you do it the right way and pay attention and protect and tether and blah 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 blah. I love that. That's it's so true. How many people I've talked to that had that first fear reaction, and then it's like, just get hit in the back of the head with a bat because you're being an idiot. Like, yep, that was me.
Yeah, man, I have to be honest. I mean, I wasn't I wasn't scared or nervous the first time I actually kind of did a ritual. Like I was just kind of, I think what kind of pushed me, like when I started out, like we kind of discussed this before, and we discussed this like a lot, like on, you know, several episodes. But when I started out, obviously I started out kind of like Wiccan, right? Yeah, you know. Anyway, and it didn't cover what I felt it needed to cover. It didn't feel like it was filling the spaces that I needed it to fill. And then there was that night. I think I've told the story before a couple of times, but there's that night I was kind of walking back to my house with a buddy of mine from like hanging out in the cemetery. And we hit the main road of the city we lived in, and the only way to know, like, to describe the sound that we heard, just was like a demon screaming, like just like a demonic scream. Like that's what we fucking booked it. And then we were running. The air was still. There was no movement in the air. And then out of nowhere, fucking just the wind just kind of comes like forward, because it's autumn, so you could see the leaves blowing towards us. Like where we were standing, there was no air. But then like you could see the leaves kind of blowing towards us, and then we hit it, and it was like hitting a fucking wall. And it was just like down on our asses. And that was kind of like, for me, it's like, all right, I want to know what the fuck that was. So
Yeah.
that's when everything flipped on me. That's when I kind of just, I went, I'm going darker with this, or what people would perceive as darker, I suppose. You know,
I mean, you get the sign that's meant for you, right?
What's that?
But I believe that people get the sign that's meant for them on whatever path they're on.
I believe that.
So.
I believe that something needs to call to you, right? You know, and I definitely think that was what kind of like called to me. And when I started doing ritual work, I was like, I guess I just have this mentality, like if something's going to come and grab my ass, and something's going to come and grab my ass, just fucking come and do it. Like, just get it done and over with.
Yeah, you like it.
I just believe that everything happens for a reason. Like, I think like there's no need to be afraid of your path. Just do it. Like, I hate to sound like a fucking Nike commercial, but it's literally what it is. Just fucking do it. Like, don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of your capabilities and your power. You know, let your power show through. Own that shit.
Yeah, and it totally ties in with a question that Benjamin had in the chat, which was about how, like, can feelings bring different entities? Because if you are not doing any kind of spiritual work, it does not mean that you're not going to be affected by the spiritual world around you. And it can even have like all kinds of things that happen to people, like health problems, all sorts of stuff, problems with their mood, problems with addiction, all these kind of things happen to people. If you are projecting energy that is like low energy, anger, fear, sadness, all that kind of stuff attracts like parasitic entities onto people. And so, or even like your own dead, like your own spirits of the dead from your ancestors could be like pissed off at you because you're letting your whole life fall apart. And they like went through so many sacrifices to, you know, bring your line to be able to survive this long in this world. They're like, come on, like, what are you doing? You know, like, and you're feeling that. Like, there's so many things that are symptoms of like life being hard that are spiritual, that once you get more control over it, it's so fascinating. Like the nuances and how these things work. So if you are interested in magic, it doesn't have to be that you're like summoning demons or working with Satan. It's literally like nature, the forces of nature. And we can put them into different categories to understand them. But also there's so many different ways of the craft based on what like actually resonates with you. And that also changes for people over time, like depending what comes up and like where you are too.
So we got a direct question here from Slim Lewis. It says, question for Orlee. What are your top 3 recommended books for someone who connects with Lucifer and wants to increase practical magic knowledge and spiritual ascent?
That's a good question. So I would say the Grimoire Verum for sure as the first one. And then I would get into like understanding how to work and connect with the entities on a more deeper level. So I tend to recommend people to take a look at Crowley's document called Liber Astarte, which teaches the devotion between the self and the spirit. And then another book, I guess, to like, you know, because it's actually a pretty good book. I would recommend the book that I wrote for from Black Moon Publishing from a number of years ago. I guess I don't have it on my desk. I thought I, oh no, I do. It's called Songs of the Black Flame from Black Moon Publishing, and it's all devotional pieces that people wrote to Lucifer, but to inspire people. But if you really want like a formal way of working with Lucifer, definitely check out the Grimoire Verum if you're looking for source material. And you'll also notice that there's different sigils for Lucifer. So like people tend to actually mostly use the sigil for Lucifer in Asia, which is that one with the triangles that intersect at the bottom and has that like curly bit. That's the symbol for Lucifer in Asia. And there's other symbols for Lucifer in that book, and that's where it all comes from.
Nice. So another thing I'd like to kind of add on to about the whole book thing. This is kind of always like there's going to come a point in your practice where each book that you get is just going to be a repeat of everything that you've already read. And there's a very important thing that needs to be understood here. A lot of the information that we have about how things used to be practiced, about how rituals used to be done is gone. It's been destroyed, it's been burned, it's, at the hands of whomever. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. That's actually such a really important point. I'm sorry to interject, but you'll find, like, if you, for example, the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Goetia, well, why is it that there's all this Judeo-Christian stuff in it? It's because that's the only way that it could have survived.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the time when we get into ritual work, you're going to find that you're going to be making it up as you go along, and that does not make it any less valid of a ritual. I mean, just listen to like what Orlee said earlier about the ritual she did for Satan. She completely made that shit up as she went along because that's what she felt to be correct. And it worked. So just because you're making it up as you go along, and it might be different than how Orlee did it, or how I do it, or how Mystic would do it, or whomever, doesn't make it incorrect. Like, I know that a lot of us would love to have a step-by-step guide on how to do this shit, but there isn't. And a lot of the really old, powerful shit that we used to use is gone. So don't be afraid to throw your imagination into it and try to figure out what works for you when you're getting into this shit. Like, just do it. Again, with the fucking Nike thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's similar to the tarot for me and you, Malice. I know that maybe others, but it's one of the reasons why I don't read the books, and I'm assuming same for you, because you create that own pathway for it yourself, and that connection is where the information comes from. It's not the book, it's not the meanings, it's that interpretation that you get from your connection to whatever it is you're working off of. Books are great. I love learning stuff, and you get some help and some ideas on how to place things in a meaningful way. And some of it probably is from way back when, right? Some of it's probably been adjusted by some monk who decided to write it in a different frame of reference for some reason. But it gives you the scaffold. And if we look at the books and the things that we read, not all of it, some of it you probably want to follow it, depending on what you're doing, would be my guess. But you want to use the information to create your own system that works for whatever it is you're doing. The rituals that Rook and I have done a couple of times with entities or deities, very similar. We like to use sigils. We make our sigils completely differently, which is fine, because that's what we use to connect ourselves. But it's not, to me anyway, and this, I'm sure there's different thoughts on this. In this context of ritual and working with it and making those independent, individual, personal connections to deities or magic or work or planets or whatever it is, it's not the sigil that does it. It's the work that you put in creating the sigil, using the sigil, having the sigil with you, practicing with it, and connecting with it. I think people get a little bit concerned or a little bit frustrated because they didn't do the exact steps of the exact thing. I love I have a big uh, affinity for the story and the whole process of High Magic and Damien Eccles and the West Memphis Three. That whole story, I learned a lot of stuff out of that book, and I've read the Lesser Banishing Ritual, the Pentagram, and how to meditate for 30 years. You know how to do that stuff, and then same information presented by a different person's practice changed how I do things now. But I didn't copy it; I integrated it into what I was already doing. So I think people get a little too hung up sometimes on if the book on page 137 says you must sit down with 3 candles, one on the left, one on the right, one at the front, and only blow 2 of them out at 3 o'clock past or 3 minutes past midnight. It's like, okay, that probably worked for that person or that whoever was doing that. That's great, but just put the work in.
I've been there. Yeah, I've totally been that guy, like doing that and trying to make everything completely perfect. And like what I can tell people is there is a great value in books, especially in the older books, like books from hundreds of years ago, where more contemporary cultists have been inspired from. There's value in that because there is a hidden formulae that they have put among the things that are like, prayers or whatever to conceal it from being destroyed. There's value in that. But when you do these things that other people have put together, it's just going to take you to where that person was then. If you want to have it benefit you truly, you need to take it and use some sort of creative way to then go on. And this is the same way why like joining cults or groups where it's like, if you just do all these things, then you'll receive spiritual attainment. Well, you're only ever going to go as far as the highest up people in that group if you're ever allowed to, so that's one whole thing. But also it always reminds me of that old movie from the 70s called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, where it's about a film crew where they go to this cemetery on this island to raise the dead to make a movie. And the director guy has this incantation book and he's standing among the graves and reciting the spell and nothing happens. And then one of his crew members tells him to get out of the grave, Alan. Let an artist show you how to call down Satan. And I thought that was really cool because it's like that idea where it's the creativity, that creative spark. That's what is of the gods, right? Like that is the force of creation, that spark of creativity. And that's what gets the spirits interested. And this is also why things like theater are rooted in spirituality. Like we can look at modern theater as literally through history being connected to like the dithyrambs where people would worship Pan and do these rituals outside, and then the church usurped all of that and made people stop doing those things. But that's like the drama of it. It's that creativity, and those things weren't like set in stone. It was like people being all crazy, getting the spirit's attention. But it also has to do with like what energy are you creating with it? Are you like, what are you doing? And that is also what is going to attract the same kind of energy to you.
I think that kind of falls back into like the idea of something I always talk about is intention is the root of magic. It's what your intentions are. I preach this all the time, but many things in life are based on intention, not with the actual action that you committed. So your magic is very much the same thing. What is like the intention of what it is that you're doing? So it's when I talk about, so for example, when I talk about cursing, for example, I personally don't do curses. I don't. I don't really need that fucking karma. I really don't. Does that mean that I won't do something that could be perceived as a curse to somebody else? No. But again, it depends on the intention. My intention is never to harm someone, but rather protect myself. That's the difference. So I'm not doing a curse with the intention of actually directly harming someone, but if I do a curse, I'm doing it with the intention of protecting myself. The intention changes everything. And it's very important to kind of have that understanding, like when you're going in and you are kind of going into like, you know, doing your rituals and doing magic, to have your intentions clear. And I think we learn this a lot, like when we talk about jinn. You know, when we talk about the jinn, there's an understanding that, you know, historically, or I guess like kind of like, you know, through the lore, that they would grant you your wishes, but they don't necessarily grant your wishes as you kind of asked for them, or how you thought they were going to come to you, rather. And it goes to intention. Like, what is your intention? Is it clear? Like, is it specific enough? You know, if you're throwing general energy out there, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you're going to get general energy back. It's like, well, we think you want this, but, you know, sift through it and see, man. So, yeah, I think that is very kind of important.
I totally agree with you on that. I always love to focus on that whole intent aspect of Crowley's work. I think it's some of the most valuable things in it, where the intent is the focus of the magician. You have to go into something knowing that, like, you're just basically going about the motions of making it happen. It's already happened in the future, and that's how you know it's going to be successful. And how your intent that's like what you really need to develop in what you're doing. And that even extends beyond like the complexity of your spell. It doesn't have to be something that's like super astrologically calculated or with any particular thing. And that's the beauty of things like folk magic, where you are just using the things that you have access to, and through the power of your super strong intent, you can make things happen by doing things with objects, for example. Or there's plenty of things that you can just magically charge with your intent that are like art and creative based as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not everybody is going to be able to have, you know, a temple. Not everybody's going to be able to have a very elaborate altar. Not everybody's going to have access to every single book out there, you know. And that's very true. Like, most of the time, what do you have access to is yourself. And that is extremely important. Self is the most important aspect of things. And which is one of the reasons why I've always considered myself a philosophical Satanist. It's like with LaVeyan Satanism, the idea is self. You are the most powerful entity in the room. And you need to understand that. You need to be able to tap into that. You need to understand where your power comes from, which it comes from within. Accept that power, and then allow it to actually grow. So many of us are so afraid of our own power, our own ability to do shit, that we just don't fucking do it. But we sit there and we sit on our thumbs and we wait for something else to happen or somebody else to do something. If you see something that needs to be done, then just do it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Nobody's coming to save you. Save yourself. You know, once you understand that you can and you are capable of doing so, holy shit, is that powerful.
Yeah, like when I was learning about magic 15 years ago, when I was a teenager, like I didn't have people where they were telling me exactly what I was supposed to do. I didn't have the internet to be like, what exactly do I do to have like the right thing to summon this spirit? I couldn't just go on a forum and ask. I had books that I had access to, and I would just go through the book and read it and practice the things in it and try to figure it out. And then we started putting stuff online, and that's really changed things a lot, where people have become kind of like lazy. But spirituality is a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that you have to do on your own self. When you're doing rituals, it makes all the darkness inside of you come out. You have to deal with that. You have to figure it out, because it's going to come out energetically just through the nuances of magic and through working with these spirits. And I think that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, while
definitely.
we're on the topic of intent too, I think it's interesting. To me, this is a recent development. Maybe it's been going on a lot longer than and I just don't see it. But You have a lot of people that, they'll say, intent is everything, and a lot of people that, and there's this argument that's been going on the last couple of years, of how it's, uh, I guess I don't want to say older, but more experienced witches at some point have been saying, like, all the young ones coming in saying, "Oh, intent is everything," and making a frustrated, concerted effort to prove that intent is not everything. I think that we tend to forget in general what intent actually means and how it functions in our life. Your action is absolutely important if you want to make action, but that action doesn't occur without the thought first. And the more intent you have in that thought, the stronger that thought is, the more likely you are to perform that action. And I know I'm being like trying booky on that, but I just wanted to bring it up because it seems to be getting a lot worse lately, where I don't know that a lot of people that are getting into it now as much really understand or really think about intent and how important it is to what we do. And intent really is everything we do. I like candle magic. Some people think it's really hokey. I enjoy it. It's one of my most fun things. I love to inscribe candles, write sigils on them, put things on them, and burn them, things that you can't see, and just, white or clear candle, can't see it. Um, and that process of setting that intention is how I remember every day to go back and do that thing, or perform that ritual, or engage in that energy, or whatever it is. And I think people tend to, and I keep saying people, and I don't mean like any generic group, but just I've seen a lot more lately, people feeling that just doing the ropes, as you mentioned before, or just doing the process is the magic. And like that's like the last part of it. Like that's the visual reminder part of it. The actual magic is the intent and the time and the energy that you're spending with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mystic. I think one of the things that confuses people the most is in a lot of contemporary occult books that people are buying, like the most popular stuff is not like primary source material. It's
Hmm.
written by people that have really good intent, or maybe they haven't even done those spells themselves and they just wrote them. That's, as someone who has worked in book occult book publishing, like I can tell you for sure that's definitely a thing. Where
Yeah.
they've just put something together. They don't even know if it's going to work, but they felt guided to write that. So that's one thing. So people could be caught on that, but also with more simplified magic and people developing more ancient grimoires into contemporary work, it does tend to get very simplified for our instant gratification culture. And that can make it much harder for people to get into the ritual setting, to get into that spiritual space. And that really confuses and frustrates people. So I would say, like, to check out older material and make your rituals longer if you're trying to do that, if you're having a hard time focusing your intent on something. But like, to speak to the power of intent is really so profound. Like, I have experienced us being able to do something with a piece of paper and a candle that, other people were trying to accomplish using all sorts of insane, elaborate things. And that's the power of intent. And it's not just me making this up. It's really things that I experience that I wish in many cases like it wasn't so bizarre. But once people start actually experimenting with this stuff over a long period of time, there are things that become so obvious that you can't deny it. And if you were to deny it, then the spirits would be like, hey, like, why are you denying this? We brought this to you. Like, do you not appreciate us? So that's another aspect of it too, I think. Like intent and knowing that the spirits are going to be able to do what you've asked them to do to help you. Um, that's a big
Hmm.
aspect of it too, and like knowing your own self-worth. And I think that's super, just to riff off that for a second, like if you're going into a ritual, you need to have the energy about you where the spirits are actually going to want to work with you. Being confident in yourself, that's very different than being an asshole. That's like the idea of being commanding in your rituals. You don't have to be mean, like just be confident in yourself and the spirits will want to work with you. And putting that energy into what you're doing, that makes a big difference too. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I kind of like it. It doesn't have to be a big battery full of electricity. It just has to be fully charged. You know, you don't have to go in there owning everything. You go in there owning what it is that your intent is and what you're trying to do. That was also one of those smack in the face kind of things that happened to me from the beginning. Probably still does once in a while, actually. Um, you know, and I think Maeve makes a really good point, a really good statement. You know, intent is mental energies. I go in these weird tangents of how I connect things. Is the way that my brain works and loose connections of things helps me remember um, just wacky stuff. So, you know, every piece of energy that's ever existed has transformed at some point or another, has gone through its transformation. How we think, and I think I said this even in the last podcast. Um, the words coming out of my mouth right now are a product of the synapses in my brain, which are energy from the animal and plants that I've eaten, which are, you know, fertilized by the grass and the blah 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 whatever. And all that energy means something, and it came from somewhere, and you are reconstructing it with your intent into that magical energy. And I think that's a very very big thing to carry into confidence when you're going into something, even if you are the meekest, quietest person. You are reformulating energy with your body to create thoughts and memories and actions. And that was the thought that got me through and how to start being a little more confident, because I would feel silly when I first did you know, a ritual, even in a group. I'm like, I'm not calling the corners. This is nuts. These people sound crazy. Like, I call to the west and da, 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 da. I'm like, yeah, okay. We do that for a reason. It puts things in place for you. It sets the tone. It helps those that don't have the right energy get to the right energy. They have a place. But when you realize that you're actually doing something, it changes. And I think that
Yeah.
confidence is a huge piece of it.
And I see that paranormal witch is struggling right now with like finding confidence in their rituals. What I would say is find some invocations that are about you and like bringing power to you, or if you can't write it yourself, like there's one thing that I really like from Austin Osman Spare's Anathema of Zos, you know, stuff like that, or like from his Book of Pleasure, where it's about like inflaming your own self and your own energy, and then recite that at the beginning of the ritual. Like say things for yourself to, you know, try. That's the whole point behind like doing something like the Kabbalistic cross at the beginning of the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, because you're like activating the divine parts of you essentially. So if you are not into doing that kind of stuff, say a little prayer to you to give you confidence. I would also recommend invoking deities that are confident deities.
I
Makes
like
sense.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I do, and I kind of went over this, I think, last episode, but like what I do when I do a ritual, I've essentially kind of ditched like kind of like all the theatrical stuff. Like I light the candles, I light the incense. I do throw on music. Music is a very powerful thing for me. Something like in the background, like some type of chanting or drone sounds, something of that nature. That's extremely important for me. But then after all of that, I kneel, I put my hands to my side, and I listen. That's it. I focus on what it is that I want to know. And the way that I do things, I never ask for anything. I don't ask for a car. I don't ask for money. The only question I have is, what do you want me to know? And I'll sit there for fucking hours. Like I can sit there for 2-3 hours just listening and letting process and going through the motions. And whether you guys believe it or not, you get answers when you dedicate that much time, when you sacrifice time, which is something you can't get back. That doesn't come back to you. You get answers. And the first time that voice in your head goes off, and it's not the voice that's in your head that's your voice, it's something else's voice. Yeah, you kind of feel a little schizophrenic for the first couple times around. But it passes. You get used to it. And I will be a huge promoter for dedicating time as the primary gift to give to any entity, any deity. Give your time. Because essentially, at the end of the day, that's all any of them want is time.
The only thing that has value, true value, like true value, because in that time, whether you spend that time listening or communicating or sharing a story or lighting a candle, making a sigil, you're right. That time, you never get it back. It is forever expended from our perspective. And the longer you do it, the more you invest in it, the more value that has taken from other things you might have been able to do, or your dedication to that specific thing. I think that's actually that's another T-shirt, but not a funny T-shirt. That's a true one. That time is really the thing that has the value that you have to offer. I mean, we can do cake and ale after every uh ritual or um any working with the deity, but they're not going to eat it. Those cookies aren't disappearing. When you throw those cookies out and leave them out for the deity, it's the squirrels and rats. I promise. The beer you pour into the ground, it is a very good. I do that because it's a good visual representation reminder of making sure that you are true to your offering. But Ishtar's not eating your cookies, honey. I'm just saying. I had to. I mean, it was there. I just had to say it. But it's
Yeah.
true. It's the value of your time. That's what matters. That to me anyway. And people may feel differently. They should be allowed to do that. That's great. But when you think about it, we some people. I see a couple of interesting death questions in the chat too. But um, in the end, like that space between when you're born and when you die, it's not. It's the time, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
value of the time that you've done. So there's not much else
Well,
there.
yeah. So, like, if I ever do any type of physical offering, the only thing I do is because for me, it just seems to feel more spiritually accurate, I suppose, is I do use wine in my rituals. But there's always leftover because I fill the cup and I never finish the cup. So, wine, because it's alcohol, evaporates and disappears. So, I will leave the wine in the glass or in the goblet on the altar until it evaporates, and then I have to wash the fucking thing. But that's the only thing I'll leave because it does evaporate into the air. So for me, evaporating into the air is more kind of like spiritual kind of smoke signal kind of thing. So that if I do a physical offering, that's the only thing I do. I'm not leaving cookies and cake and shit. No, and my kid would
Yeah,
eat
I
it
do.
anyway.
And you do what works. It's a great thing. We've often used wine, but to me, the leaving of the food it's just the visual representation of what's in your brain. But to me, the most fun thing that to me with food, and I mean, I like food, good thing, um, is when there are books that you can read about correspondences of a deity, right? So, for example, one of the first deities I worked with that was not like that was on a new path for me because I started with the normal. You had the triple goddess, and then you have your whether it's Welsh or Irish or whatever pantheon that many people get into was Dionysus, and afterwards myself not an offering to the gods, but afterwards in that rest period, because to me I've always been completely zapped out after a ritual, energized and charged, but needing a nap. And so we would eat things that would be a representation of that person. Dionysus, the god of wine, Greek, have some olives, that kind of stuff. um there are things that you can do that kind of set the, and it's not about like the food itself or the whatever the item is. It is the representation in the setting of your mind, and it helps with that intention setting and that reminder of the process, and that whole thing. It just ties it together a little bit. And I think that I think a lot of people do wine. I think it's a really good one because wine is a very old drink. It's been made for years in different ways, and what better way to celebrate?
Yeah, especially if it's something that is delicious to you, or if it's something that you have made or baked yourself and you've put all that time and energy into it and you're sharing part of it with the spirits. There's the symbolism is really what matters in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it always kind of comes down to like the symbolism, right? Which is why, we put up the banners, we put up the candles, we put up the statues, all of those things. Like when we're kids and our minds are running a million miles a minute, we could just draw a pentagram on a piece of paper, stick it to a wall, and we're good to go. Now, me sitting here, 35 years old, gonna be 36 this year. God, that fucking hurts saying that.
Wait till you hit 40.
I need a little bit more motivation. You know what I'm saying? Like my brain needs a little bit more kind of like, serotonin going off. So like all this stuff over here kind of helps with that. But all of the shit that you put on your altar at the end of the day, that's for you. That's for you. Like when you put a statue on your altar, that's for you. When you put that banner up, that's for you. The time that you're spending listening, that's for the spirit. That's for the entity. The time that you are putting into it, that is what you're giving. You didn't spend $80 on a statue for Baphomet.
That was
no, you
for
spent you spent $80 on a statue of Baphomet for yourself, right? So you can have that visual connection. Baphomet doesn't need that visual connection. Satan doesn't need that visual connection. You do. So understand where the differences are, right? Don't say, well, I got the statue and I got the sigils and I got this and why is shit not working? Well, because you're not putting the time in, my friend. You're not putting that energy in there that the spirits and the entities want from you. They want something from you. Make no mistake about that. They want something from you. Nothing that they are going to do for you is for free. But if you're not listening, you will never fucking know. Which is why for me, with the Order of Baphomet, the third tenet, silence. Listen.
Silence.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a little bit of lag.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right, here we go. Okay. So there is work that I'm doing every day, and I'm going to be doing this every single day for a long time. But the magic that I'm doing, it's a very simple thing that I put together. It doesn't involve any physical objects or anything. It's literally just me doing one little thing. But because I'm doing it every single day, I'm putting in time for it. And the stuff that I'm writing and drawing through doing this exercise has been some of the most profound stuff that I've ever done in my life. And it's because I've made time to do it. And it's not easy to do something every single day like this, but I'm making myself do it and dedicating my time to it. So the spirits are like, okay, we're here. And the only reason that I have been able to refine these things in magic in this way is because I have been doing this for 15 years. I've put so much time into it. I've dedicated my life to it. And that's the spirits want you to give their, especially even with the dead. Like the dead have nothing but time. And our time is just so minuscule here right now. So there's always opportunities for you to give your precious time into things. Absolutely. And just to speak on the intent behind things, I want to talk for a little bit about the band my girlfriend Yuri and I have been working on called Nightmare Sleep, which is a death rock band that we have been writing our EP for. And if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my channel because we've been working really hard on this and I think y'all will like it. My channel is just my name, Orlee Stewart. And so anyway, it's spells. The music itself are spells, but the spells are not calculated through some sort of scientific formulae. The spells are created by our intent. And the inspiration behind it is Typhonian magic and the spirits of the deep, the spirits of the ocean, and the spirits of the dead. And I'm also the Oracle of the Old Ones for the Esoteric Order of Dagon. So part of the spells are to communicate with the Great Old Ones, to communicate with the spirits of the dead, the spirits of the Great Deep. And so some very strange things have already started occurring since we wrote our EP and have been practicing it all the time. We started this project because of quarantine. and because of the plague and just being here all the time. So we wrote a whole EP together, and so it has to do with the spirits of the dead and the spirits of the deep. And so yesterday, my friend messages me, and we're all very close, and we all see each other all the time and do magic together and stuff like that. And just the synchronicities and the strange things that have already started happening just from these songs that have intent to communicate with these entities. So my friend, she accidentally broke some spell jars that belong to our other friend, who is a very serious elemental and weather mage. I live in New Orleans, so like the people that I know that do magic are pretty terrifying. And so she accidentally broke these jars of his, and it turned out the jars contained restless spirits of the dead from the Mississippi. And so that happened, and we've been practicing these songs every day. And then we had this really strange occurrence last night where we went to do our laundry, and we were missing 2 quarters that were essential to be able to dry our clothes. And it was very strange. And so I had to call her up and ask, like, hey, do you have 2 quarters so we can finish doing our laundry? And her boyfriend drove them over to our house, and he was also doing the same kind of weird magic, trying to contact these entities. And then I realized the symbolism of that, which is like the 2 coins to pay your way across the river Styx. And part of the spell that I've been doing every single day is asking for the spirits of the dead to help grant me passage across their world. So, and that's not even part of the music. This was just like my own personal working. And so all these things are like bleeding together into this weird strangeness. So, yeah, it's been pretty exciting.
Nice.
That is awesome. Yeah.
I mean, I love it when shit like that happens. Like when you get those kind of like those little, you know, things that kind of happen that you know are connected to something bigger, you know, and that you can understand that. I'd have to say the last 6 months of my life have been pretty much like that. Like where certain things have lined up in such a very specific way for a very specific thing that you can't ignore it. Like if you look at the whole big picture and you change one single minute event, one decision that somebody, you know, made differently down the line, and like the entire structure of everything that you're seeing in front of you just falls apart. Like it's there. It's there. It happens every day. It's just whether or not you're inept enough to actually fucking like look at it and see it for what it actually is. You know, like if you're listening, if you're silent and you pay attention and you listen, you will see this shit happening all the time. Now there's a comment in the chat that I kind of want to address. Now I'm not one to tell anyone what they are or what they aren't. I'm not. Okay? You can call yourself whatever it is that you feel like you wish to call yourself, but I'm going to give my perspective on it. The comic book Jackpot says, I'm a satanic master. I live my life as if I were the fallen angel. That's cool. But I do take issue with people using the word master. Because the idea of the word master would signify that you know everything. That there is nothing left for you to learn. I think it is extremely important, especially on the left-hand path, because these motherfuckers like to smack down arrogance as quick as shit, and I've seen it firsthand. Be humble. Be who you are, but nobody, at least in my circle, is impressed with somebody calling themselves a master. Because when you're in this, like you're really in it, you're never, ever a master. Ever. I run an entire order. I am no master. I am always a student. I'm always learning. I'm always taking things in. And you should be always taking things in from those around you. Teach those who you can teach, learn from those that can teach you. And when neither of those two apply, be silent and wait for the opportunities to do either. But I think we require in our circles more humility and understanding that we are merely children trying to find our way through a dark hallway. That's it. We stumble, we fall, we get up, and we go back at it again. Oh, yeah, I had to comment on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And just to touch on that, because I know Comic Book Jackpot. He's been a viewer of my channel for many years, and he's had a lot of really great success with his spells. And I would say definitely having success is fantastic. It means you're really like, you're living your will. There's always something more to learn. Yeah, and exactly like what Malice was saying. Like I have a lot of qualifications of things. I am a consecrated bishop. I have a lot of things, little whatever badges of time that I've spent, significating that. But there's always going to be more things for me to learn, always. And the moment that you think that you have all the answers, the spirits are going to be like, no, here's a whole new chapter to your life where you're going to have to figure that out. And so also that the spirits definitely have more for him beyond what he's currently doing. And that is very profound.
Well, it's good. I mean, I don't know him. It's the first time I see him in my chat. So, I mean, welcome, Comic Book. I didn't mean to put you on the spot or anything, but, I like being interactive with my chat, and I like kind of like putting my ideas out there. So the next thing I kind of want to talk about, because we haven't touched on it so much yet, it was kind of mentioned here and there, but how would you define, Orlee, the differences between high magic and low magic?
Okay. So when I first started learning about magic, I found a book in the library that was about high magic and low magic. I guess the easiest way to differentiate it is high magic requires some kind of formal, ritualized calculation or formulae, and low magic is more about just pure intent.
Okay. Because I've had people label the type of magic that I do, like the whole just kneeling and listening, like not like doing the whole theatrical thing, not like having like bells and whistles and all this stuff. I've had people describe that as high magic. I've never personally described it as high magic.
I think because you have created the events to be able to give yourself that through high magic, perhaps at times it like they bleed into each other. And I think it's kind of not really necessary to be creating these like little definitions of things. Because that can just distract from the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like high and low magic is along the lines for me of light and dark, good and bad, positive, negative. It's high and low is a polarizing, opposing force when you look at it from just the definition of high and low, but they're not. They're descriptors. They're adjectives or adverb, whatever. It's been a long time since I've been in school, but they're describing something. And so for me, high and low magic are just two ways of doing similar things. One of them is a structured, and I think we talked about this is something that's come up quite a few times too. I think some people feel like if their magic is called high, that means it's better. And it feels good to say it's high magic, right? Because it feels good to say, oh, I do high magic. I don't do low magic. Because it does elicit that response in people, right? If I say I do high magic, I'm high up, or I'm not getting down on the ground and doing the low. I do believe that has a piece of it of how people interpret what it is. But for me, like you can do something that is considered high magic today and do something tonight that's considered low magic.
Yeah, I think magic is just magic. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could understand kind of like the technical differential between like the style, like how it's done, right? But I think at the end of the day, magic is just magic. That's just what it is. You either connect or you don't connect. And
Yeah,
so
my family is low magic, folk magic, is a part of the Pennsylvania Dutch, like the Braukerei and the Hexerai. It's all low magic. There's no ritualistic to it. This was the gypsies. Well, I hate using the term because I know it has some connotations with it, but it's that is all considered low magic. There's no ritual to it. There's no practice to it. It's a little bit of frog legs, a little bit of grubs on the underside of a piece of fungus piece of wood, stuff like that. But is it any less effective? I would venture to say my family believes it isn't.
Yeah, it's just it's just energy. You're putting it out there, and then that it comes from you, like it comes from inside of you. Like that's the thing. I always keep saying that. Are you connecting to something bigger than yourself? Yes, you're connecting to something bigger than yourself. But that's not where the power's coming from. You're taking your power and you're connecting it, and then they dictate whether or not they want to amplify it, shut it down. Because let me tell you, there's a couple of times that I've done rituals or I've done spells, and this shit just got shut down. Like it was just like, nope, not happening.
Not today, Satan.
Right?
Sorry.
Sorry. So you don't always, get the results that you're looking for, because it's not about what you're looking for. It's about what you need. Right? And whether you believe it or not, every single one of you in the chat, every single person on this panel right now, every single one of us, we have a part to play. Whether that be in each other's lives, in the lives of the people that we care about, or the entire planet, we all have a part to play. And the things that we need in order to reach our full potential is the most important thing that we need to be focusing on, not the things that we want. Okay? So, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you are doing black magic just to get the things that you want, it's going to cause psychological things within your own self or events in your life that force you to do the things that you really need that were getting in the way of the thing that you want. That's where a lot of people get really confused, because they want all these things, but they're not willing to make the sacrifices in their life. And by that, I mean, they're not willing to take the risk of quitting a job that they hate, that's taking all their time and energy and creativity up. Like, for example, or they're not willing to leave a relationship that is destroying them because it would just be easier to not, for example. All these things become very to the forefront when you start doing magic to achieve goals. And if you don't tackle those things, situations will arise where you have to face them, whether you like it or not. And then depending on how you deal with that, that's if you're able to even continue going forward in magic, or if you just spiral backward into trying to exist in the mundane world again.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. And like a lot of the time when people start out with this stuff, like when you're going back to the whole idea of not wanting to sacrifice anything, it's like they want something, they want to grow, they want to move forward. But what they don't understand is that the old has to kind of fall off first. Like you have to really kill what's behind you before you can move forward. And for a lot of people, sometimes that involves losing your job, losing your house, getting a divorce, a lot of what would be perceived as bad shit. But what you don't understand is what's happening is everything that's holding you back from obtaining the thing that you want is starting to fall away. And you're getting what you asked for. But the thing is you can't. Transformation is painful. Like if you really want to grow, truly want to grow, like it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. And you have to understand whether or not are you ready for that pain? Are you ready to deal with that? Because the entities that we're talking about, at least for the most part, don't fuck around. Like there's a reason why, a lot of people consider it black magic or dark magic, things like that, because you'll get what you want, you'll get what you need, but the whole process is going to hurt. This isn't The Craft. This isn't Hollywood. This isn't bubbles and butterflies and rainbows. It doesn't work that way. working with the shadow is important. You know, you have a shadow and you need to work with it, and you need to cleanse it. You know, and generally speaking, the shadow's cleansed by fire. So.
Yeah, you could even see it in the same way as like the bravery that it takes to actually contact spirits. You need to approach life in that particular way, where you have to take responsibility for your life, and you have to be willing to put the same work and time into your own life. Instead of, you can't just be lazy and expect spirits to make changes for you. It's not going to happen that way. Like, they're not going to just let you do everything you're doing and not address problems that you have that are in the way of you getting what you want. Like, so many times people do spells for wonderful big things, like to help their career, but maybe they're in a situation where if they got that money or whatever, their alcoholism might get in the way and they'll drink it all away, for example. And like that I would say it can be a big problem for people. Like, are you actually able to handle what will happen when your spell comes true? If you can't, that could even be something that is getting in the way of it happening.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like your own ability to actually deal with things, like balance. Like, anybody that's like a regular here understands that one of the things that I talk about all the fucking time is balance. Right? And though balance is different for other people, I mean, that's up to you yourself and the things that you're working with, what balance looks like for you. But the point is balance, light and dark. Like, it exists at the same time. Like, it's dark where I'm at right now, on the other side of the planet, it's light right now. You know, it doesn't go away. It's still there. It's just on the other side. Balance.
Yeah, and you could even see that in the way that you put energy into spells to help them work. So, like, for example, I've taken a lot of risks in my life to get to where I am today. Not every one of those risks resulted in something good, but it did put me on the path of where I needed to be. So, like, for example, when I was in my early 20s, I took a risk for love and I married a guy that lives in California. And that's why I had initially immigrated to America. Otherwise, I never would have. And it was because of that I eventually just woke up one morning and felt that I needed to move to New Orleans. And I took the risk and I did that. But I also, along with putting things in the hands of the spirits so things would work out for me, I also stay up all night long working on projects, putting my whole heart and soul into them for days and weeks at a time, not just expecting everything to be handed to me and letting the spirits work with me, because they will work through what is in your life. That is how magic works. It's not going to suddenly make a million new things appear into your life. It'll work through the corridors. If you don't ever look for opportunities to help your career, if you don't ever make any art and put it out there, no one's going to see it. And then if that's what your goal is, but you can't even do the thing, then you should be doing magic to help you do the thing and like actually get it done and focus on that first, and then have these other things as greater goals.
Yeah, definitely. No, and another aspect to kind of take into consideration as well is like, so there are going to be circumstances and situations that, let's say, like you're doing a ritual, you're working with an entity, and you're asking for something. I don't know, fucking anything. It doesn't matter. Like, fill in the blank. And you're going to start to see things start to fall away. So you're going to start, you know, like, for example, like a divorce happening, or, you know, again, like losing the house kind of thing. So nothing you ask for is free. It's not free. You don't get it. You don't get something for nothing. And so, like, I always kind of looked at it kind of like, I think the story is it Rapunzel? Rapunzel with the, like, the wheel, like the spinning wheel and things like that. And, like, she pricked her fingers, she fell asleep and all that shit. I think it was
Sleeping Beauty.
Is that Sleeping Beauty? No, there's one. Oh, what was it? What was the one? I'm thinking of one, like a little fucking demon dude came to her, said she needs to give her first son.
Oh, Rumpelstiltskin.
Rumpelstiltskin. Jesus. Sorry, guys. Not well versed in that shit.
But it was a little different than kind of how you said it, but yeah, you merged.
Yeah, it's the general idea. The general idea, right? You know, so with
Little
the
dude,
whole idea with Rumpelstiltskin, right? Is that, well, you need me to do this thing for you, then I'll do this thing for you, but you need to give me this. And at the time, you don't sit there and think that, well, hey, you know, that's not a big thing. I don't have a kid, you know, whatever. Fuck it, sure, I'll give you my first kid, right? And when the time comes,
first
and
kid.
yeah, right. And when, you know, when the time comes and you got to pay the bill, well, that's when shit hits the fan, right? You don't want to pay the bill. That's essentially what's happening with a lot of the things that people ask for. A lot of things when people start working with entities, is that you're asking for something and you need to clear out all this shit that's holding you back. But on top of that, you need to pay the bill. They're like, yeah, I'm going to give this to you, but I want this. I want this to happen to you. You need to go through this.
Yeah, and another thing that I just think is super important to interject with is that it doesn't mean you have to give up things in your life that are awesome or good. It means, like, it's not like, oh, I have to give up my happiness in these things to get what I want. No, it's you have to face the things that are happening in your life that are in the way of getting what you want. It doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice things that are good at all. It's you have to deal with the things that are not good that were in the way of things expanding. Some people think they can just do spells and their life will stay like exactly the same, except for just suddenly having this other thing happen. And that's not how magic works. It's never going to just affect the one thing that you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's a chain reaction. You know, you're setting off the universe, and it's a domino effect. You know, you can't just knock one down and expect the rest of them to stand up. They're all going to start coming down in a row, and you've got to be ready for that. You know, like, you have to expect it. Sometimes it's going to be a minor thing. Sometimes it's going to be major. Depends on what you're asking for and the things that you need to do. And it's one of the things that I always used to say about Christianity and Catholicism. The lazy man's religion. Because you fall on your knees and you pray to God for whatever it is that you want, and then you put it in God's hands. Put it in God's hands. No, motherfucker, you don't put it in God's hands. Put it in your own fucking hands. Take control of that shit. You don't fucking wait. What? You're gonna go on your knees, please give me this, and then hopefully tomorrow it happens? No, it doesn't work that way.
What always gets me isn't the putting it. Well, yeah, the putting it in God's hands is one thing because that has many unfortunate meanings. But it's the idea that when it doesn't happen, well, you go back and say, well, it just wasn't meant to be, or it wasn't right for me. You didn't do anything different to try to get to do what you wanted to do. You know, so it's I can see the wanting to put something in God's hand. That's an initial human reaction to trying to get something, right. You know, if you believe that there's this omniscient power that's out external that has control over every single thing that ever exists, yeah, I want to give it to God's hands. But then when it doesn't happen, I'm going to ask, like, wait a minute, where's my $50 bills? Where's my pound of 50, you know, that I asked for? Oh, well, it must not be meant to be. I mean, it's such a short-sighted view to me, personal opinion. I don't want to, you know, people have their own beliefs, but it's just a short-sighted way of trying to manifest things in your life. And then the option to just do whatever the hell you want and then confess and you're good. Okay, so you can feel guilt without feeling responsibility, and that's the problem. You know, if you can wash your guilt but you still don't feel responsibility for whatever it is you're confessing, doesn't change anything. So
Exactly.
you have to figure that out in yourself.
No, it's just, there's so many things about it, like the whole contradiction for God's plan. That's another big one. God's plan. God has a big plan, right? Okay, so what happens, right? But what happens if what you want goes against God's plan? Then what's the point in fucking asking for it to begin with?
Yeah, that's the slavery aspect of religion, where it's even taught, like in the Bible, that, you know, back in those days, the spirits would intervene in people's lives, but they don't really do that anymore. And, you know, with all that, there is something to be said in incorporating working with, you know, those spirits in general, but from like a heretical practice, which is what I do. Like, for example, like working with them like actual spirits and entities, not in that like I know if I pray it's in God's hands and like that'll happen. I don't believe in that at all. But I do believe in like egregores and the power of if a bunch of people believe in a thing, it becomes something that you can work with as a force. But those people aren't really working with it as magicians. They're just being slaves to those things. So, but I have a funny story, which is that there was a time like last year when a lot of people were throwing curses at me, and we had the key to our front door get stuck in the lock, and we could not get the key out of the lock at all because we had actually put the wrong key into the door. And so we stood there for like 20 minutes trying to pull it out of the door and could not do it. I literally recited the Our Father because I knew that the people were using like demonic magic on me. So I was like, oh, well, like in my mind, in my intent, like if I pray the Our Father over this, it'll probably fix the problem. And literally I did it and the key slid out of the door. But that's like my intent. It's not really about that. That it's just about like me and my mind and in my centering the universe around myself as being God and working with these forces that made the intent super pure. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the intent is the important part. It wasn't the words that you spoke, but the intent like connected to them. You know, it makes perfect sense. You know, I know a lot. There's probably some people out there be like, oh, well, you know, I don't know, you're drinking the Kool-Aid or something. But it's like, no, like if.
What are you supposed to do with the Kool-Aid? Let it sit there?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends. Like if it's a blue Kool-Aid, yes, but if it's a red Kool-Aid, drink it.
All right, point taken.
Guess it depends who made the Kool-Aid, right?
Yeah, this is true.
I'll make my own.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, I mean, you know, like strawberry and cherry flavored always is my thing. So you know, yeah, I just think you know, just the whole religion thing just. So there was a time period there, like where I was doing kind of reaction videos to like various people, I call them evangelical extremists. That's what I call them. Because especially a guy by the name of John Ramirez.
Oh,
right. That guy is fucking, I hate to use this word,
danger.
but he is fucking prolific, and prolific in a bad way, because he first and foremost, if you guys ever go watch his stuff, he was not a Satanist. Okay, he was some weird Brazilian subsect of fucking Satanism that believed in human sacrifice and shit like that. And he will openly talk about people that he has killed and things that he's done for the organization and stuff like that, and then turns around and talks about that all witches of any form are a danger not only spiritually but to humanity physically. And that the time for the armor of Christ is past, and it is time for the Christian to actually go to battle. And he's literally trying to brood a fucking physical war between Christians and witches. And sadly, I don't think people really understood what it was I was trying to call him out on when I was watching the video. Right, when I went through the video and I reacted to it. But I've done, everybody I react to, I do a lot of research on. So I think the point that I'm trying to get to here is that Christianity, it's not something to be edgy with. It's not something that I'm trying to be edgy with. I'm not trying to be anti-Christian. There are people that are Christian that I'm friends with. There's actually, there he is right there, Mark 5. There you go. He is an Eastern Christian, and he is severely outnumbered in this chat, and he still comes in and throws his thoughts down, and I have much respect for this individual, because, you know, he is in a chat full of Satanists and otherwise.
For some good conversation, too.
Yeah, he does. But there are people on that side of things that are dangerous, because the thing is they will put videos out how to identify a witch, and sad to say, every single one of us on this panel fit that description. And It's dangerous because all you need is one fucking whack job that listens to this guy talk. And you know those whack jobs, right? Those are the whack jobs and the gun-toting whack jobs. You know, they have the fucking shotgun in the back window of their truck, right? All you need is one of these whack jobs that are going to listen and watch one of these guys, see one of us walking down the street, and guess what? We get buckshot to the head because they think they're doing God's work. These people are dangerous. And we need to be aware of it. Like, people keep passing it off like, no, it's nothing. They're just talking shit. Look at history. Just go back and look at history. Go back to Salem, right? Half of the people that died weren't even witches. It just took a couple of people talking shit. And guess what? People got hung, people got burned, people got drowned, people got their fucking heads cut off. So, one of the reasons why I always talk about unifying the occult is for our own protection. It don't matter what you believe in. It doesn't matter if you're a kitchen witch, if you're a Satanist, if you're a Luciferian. It doesn't matter. I don't care. But the occult needs some kind of unification.
Yeah, and also it would be the best for people to not behave like that stereotype that those people are trying to proliferate. Because I know when a lot of people try to get into dark magic, they try to be like as big of an edgelord as possible and say a whole bunch of stuff. And now with the internet and everything, we have so much more reach to people. So be responsible at how you are actually representing magic to other people.
No, exactly. Like, I mean, how we like project ourselves to the public, like what we're doing right now, this is about education, right? This conversation, it's fun. Like, I enjoy doing this, but sitting here and talking to Mystic and talking to Orlee, this is about education. This is about putting a message out there that shows what it is that we actually do. Not what Hollywood portrays, not what the edgelords portray, not these other people that I'm not going to get into because, I'm not going to get into it. But not these people that do that type of shit. Because, one, this current state of the occult right now is a laughingstock. Not to us as the occultists, but to the people on the outside. Because the way that they're looking at it is we can't make up our own fucking minds about what's up and what's down. That's one. Okay? Two, because of that disorganization, because of that internal bickering that we have, because of that gatekeeping, because that inability to just to simply accept somebody for who they are and accept them into your circle, we are divided. We are divided in our own community. And so long as we are divided in our own community, it's shooting fish in a barrel. If we can't come together and put that wall up to say, this is who we are and we stand together, I'm honestly afraid that one day it's going to come to the point where people are going to start trying to pick us off. I'm legitimately afraid of it. I wouldn't bring it up if I wasn't. Now, you can call it paranoia. You can say that I'm ridiculous, but I've done enough research into these organizations and into these people to understand and realize that that is legitimately what they're trying to do. They are legitimately trying to bring things to a boiling point, religiously speaking, spiritually speaking, where it's not going to be about curses and spells. It's going to be about going outside in a bulletproof vest because your area happens to have a few more Christians than someone else's area. Now, I'm not saying that all Christians are like that. Of course they're not. Okay, I'm not saying all churches support that. Of course they don't. But you don't need them all to support it. You don't need them all to be that way. All you need is one. And that's enough to bring other people in. How do you think the fucking neo-Nazis start? Just takes one guy spouting off bullshit, and somebody with a little less education than somebody else listens to that shit. It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, actually, half of my family was killed in the Holocaust, so I definitely can relate to that on a very personal level. And that's also why I care so much about people taking responsibility for what it is they are doing to represent magic and the spirits to the public, and to really look at that, like how you're acting and what you are claiming. Because with a lot of it too, it's people have these ridiculous claims where they say like, oh, they have the powers of life and death in their hands, and this is something that they're like proliferating for profit, for example. That's not representing spirituality very well to these people. It's literally like creating a problem, and it's like, we know that those people are full of shit anyway, and that's not real. But to someone that doesn't understand, they might think that that is real and not just fantasy scams or whatever, so to take responsibility for what you're doing, and especially when it comes to like sensational things, and see how that's actually affecting the entire community as well.
Exactly. I mean, the way that I look at it panning out, at least in the short term, is some type of committee, like a committee of people that are respected in the community, that people look to for answers, to be able to, because if people aren't going to take personal responsibility, somebody needs to make them take responsibility. Somebody needs to be there to call them out. Now, this isn't to sit there and say that we're going to be policing policing the community. That's not the point. But when we all can agree that somebody crops up inside the community that we know is full of shit, and we see a lot of people kind of falling into it, somebody needs to be there to put up the stop sign and say, hey, wait a second. This is not how shit is supposed to go. Like, now you can do whatever it is that you want to do, but what you're telling these people, we know, is bullshit. And if you can have that committee, if you can have that board to go to and say, hey, is this organization, or are these people approved by these people? Like a verification of some sort. It stops a lot of problems that have happened recently from happening again. So, I know a lot of people don't like that idea. I understand. But the fact of the matter is, guys, we need it. We need it. I'm not looking to control what people do. I don't care what you do. I don't. But we need to stand together. We need to protect each other. Because we are all we have. This community, what we have going on right now, right here, this is all we've got. And if we don't protect each other, who the fuck is going to? Sorry, I went on a real bad rant with that one. Sorry.
I think it's great, especially, Malice, like if you think about how big the occult has become due to the rise of the internet just over the past 10 years. Where before we were like, there was no other people you could even talk to about this stuff. And now it's all over the place. It's not just in pop culture, but it's like there's people posting all their personal things like all the time. And we have to really think about what are the consequences of that. We have to think about how lucky we are that we have the freedom to be able to express these things, but with that comes a responsibility as well.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take to do something like that. I don't know what that's going to look like. I am actively working on it. I'm actively trying to figure out the logistics of what that's going to look like. It has to be something that not only the panel of people that I bring together agrees upon, but the community also agrees upon. But it's something that does need to happen. So, well, comic book, that is a topic that is not going to be brought up. So, if you're curious about my opinion on those particular things, go back in the backlog. It's there. But
and you can Google. He can Google it. Just Google it is what I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, you could do that too. Yeah, just Google it. So, you know, I hate seeing people being taken advantage of, and I hate seeing people being mistreated. I just hate seeing shit like that, and I see that happening more and more in our community, and I don't like it. I'm seeing people that are interested, newcomers that want to come in and want to learn and want to grow, and they're being taken advantage of, you know, to buy a fucking $500 fucking altar cloth, you know, because somebody said that they needed it, you know, in order to do the rituals correctly. And then when they realize that they don't have the money to get into it, then all of a sudden, you know, that we lose somebody. We lose somebody that was interested, because there's people out there that are predatory, taking advantage of these people. There's just so much shit going on between the stuff that I was talking about with people like John Ramirez, you know, the people taking advantage of other people that are just coming into the community, the gatekeeping inside of the community, people telling people that you can't do this because you're doing it wrong, or you're doing that. It's too much, guys. It's not just one issue. It's so much shit that we need to work on as a community.
That's always going to happen. Unfortunately, human beings suck. I mean, that's not even a spiritual witchcraft, a religious thing. People are going to always attempt at some point to take advantage of others when they can, especially if they're that type of person. If you know that the I keep thinking Richard Ramirez in my head because I was watching an ID earlier. Um, so then, you know, I got the wrong person in my head, but I know who you're talking about. And in that person, in another life, if it wasn't this, it was going to be something else. You know, and that's it's the way to get through to people again. It's been mentioned before. I don't know who did, but it was one of the somebody is having the conversation, being open about it, not becoming the gatekeepers, having the conversations, talking about what's worked for us, talking about how we treat.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of mention back a comment that Paranormal Witch said, which I love, and I've seen it a couple of times. You know, thinking about religious organizations, where you know someone in that organization out of those thousands of people sitting in that pew practice witchcraft. The truth of the matter is they all do, right? If you look at at witchcraft as a definition of something, the rituals that they do in the Catholic Church, yeah, the offering, the going up, it's all ritual. It's all a type of witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's just witchcraft has been able to be latched upon based on what it is, and anything occult that people fear because they have seen it in a certain way or a certain light. So that's those things will change. And I think the number of people, and that it's one of the things why I don't get frustrated with um you know, people talking about, you know, being new into it and moving too fast. Yes, we can spend some energy, and we should, and I think there's some responsibility for those that choose it to provide information for people to allow them to guide themselves. But the fact of the matter is, Wicca is growing exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
The occult is growing huge. You know, hell, 5 years ago, I don't even know if a discussion on YouTube on Left Hand Path has happened. I don't know if it existed five, maybe even 10 years ago, if you want to go far
It
enough back.
didn't. It
Yeah,
didn't.
and
Yeah,
that's great.
that's why people, and when we started doing this, like when I first started making videos about like having sex with demons, all these people, even people like today now that like are all like saying like yeah that's a thing, they all made fun of me and called me insane because I made videos about this talking about it even with historical references, but still like because nobody was online like talking about it, um it was a totally different time.
Yeah, and unification, bringing people together is very important, but it is very, very, very thin line to walk on how to do that. To me, personal opinion, it has to be deliberate. Yes, there's thought put into it, but that part of it has to happen on its own, because any other way is going to seem disingenuous or gatekeepy. I'm not saying that it
Mm-hmm.
is, but that's how people are going to receive those things. So it's the conversation that's going to make a difference. And the more people that can see the conversation, I am not a left hand path person. It's not something that specifically speaks to me. I see a huge number of similarities. I consider myself mutt witch is the best way I can describe it, of just all random kind of things I've learned. And I think having people in here like Mark 5, Paranormal Witch, who's on her own path, all the different people in the chat that have come in that are from different paths, just having the conversation, being able to have the conversations, that's what's going to make
Exactly.
the change.
Well, that's why
You know?
like I'm not trying to pull people together. Like I completely agree. It needs to happen naturally. Like it has to be an organic thing. You know, I'm not trying to like sit here and like handpick people to be on, you know, a committee that's going to basically call people out for their bullshit. Enough of the community needs to be behind it for it to happen. And then from that point, when there's enough of the community that agrees with it, that believes that it's a potentially good idea, then we can discuss the logistics of how it is that we're supposed to be doing this, not beforehand.
Yeah, I think it would also help people because I think I deal with a lot of the aftermath of people who have been taken advantage of, or people who had something done and it went horribly awry and are having really bad paranormal experiences because of it, that were taken advantage of. A lot of people are afraid of like what's going to happen to them if they talk about it, because maybe they've spent a lot of money on something and they feel ashamed or stupid, or they're afraid of like what that person is going to do. And yeah, like those people probably will do something, which is because that's all they can do, right? They'll try to, but if people are willing to like talk about like, okay, that didn't work at all and I feel taken advantage of, then other people won't have that happen to them. But a lot of people are afraid, and I think that's a big part of the problem.
I agree. And unfortunately, like the way that current situations have unfolded in our communities, it just breeds fear. And then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, y'all saw what happened to my partner and I over the past year. But I mean, it's also been the gateway to me having the best life I've literally ever had. So, you know, it is what it is. But there is an importance to actually like speaking your truth and not being afraid to be silenced by people, because that's all they have, you know, like that's, yeah, all we have is our time. So what are you going to give your time to? And it's like the whole New Year's resolution thing we were talking about at the beginning, where like I was trying to make my New Year's resolution to try to paint or do art every single day, like something simple, but that's also going to, like, I try to not make grandiose New Year's resolutions, because I think as a magician or a witch or whatever you're doing or whatever, it's always good to think about what you need to do to have those constant resolutions for yourself. Like, what is your problem? Like, do you get sad a lot? Do things trigger you and make you angry? Do you have problems with things? Like, figure out what those things are, and you should constantly be doing that. It doesn't mean that you're not being spooky to deal with your psychological problems or something. Like, you should be not letting them control you, because that might also fuel what kind of magic you're doing. You need to really look at yourself and think about like, what kind of vibes am I putting forward in doing this? Or especially even doing stuff for other people, or putting those energies into the world.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely. Very well said. You know,
Thank you.
I mean, I think my big thing for me, the reason I do this, again, apart from the reason that I do enjoy it, it's fun for me, is I want to help people. Like, my main focus in this is to help as many people as I can in any way that I can. I think that, at least for me personally, growing up, there was kind of like a lot of turnover points for me where I wish there was somebody there that could help guide me, right? Or at least give me a word of advice, you know, that felt like they were in my corner. And I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of us kind of like run into, you know, in our past, I think most of us, is that we didn't have that growing up. We didn't have that feeling that there was somebody in our corner. We were the only one in our corner. And I think that if somebody's going to come into this path and they want to grow on it, if they're so looking for that guidance, I want to give people that option. I want to give people the ability to have that. So having conversations with like people like yourself, Orlee, that have done significantly more things than I have, is extremely important to get that knowledge out to people so people can understand that you're not alone. I mean,
Yeah, that's why I started making my channel in the first place. Like I was feel at first it was just a place for me to put my like weird magic art videos that I did in school, but then it turned into me making videos about magic because I felt super alone. I wanted to connect with other people that were having the same kind of experience as me. And then it turned into helping people like through that. My sense of wanting to belong to a greater community and reaching out and putting my little signal out there 10 years ago, and then it turned into people like asking me for help. And I have taken oaths where I have sworn to help people. People ask me, how do I have so much patience for people that are new? I mean, everyone was new at a certain time, and you could look at somebody starting in magic as being like a child of magic. You don't really know. You don't know the long-term consequences of what you're doing, and it's very different than the immediate gratification of when you just get started and things are exciting. There's always like a long-term ripple effect of every single thing that you do.
exactly. Well, on that note, I think it's a very good note to end on. We are at our 2-hour limit. If it goes any longer, I'm not going to be able to upload it. So, everyone, thank you for being here with myself, Mystic, and Orlee. It has been an absolute pleasure having all of you here. I am Mr. Malice. This is the Malice Experience. And I will see all of you next week. Orlee, do you want to lay out like your socials, things like that, so people can follow you, get that stuff out there?
Yeah, sure. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's my name, Orlee Stewart. And if you'd like to see my website, it's motherofabominations.com.
All right, perfect. Thank you all. That's going to be it for this evening. You all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week. Peace out, everybody.